Greetings, warlords. Alex from Inner War Strength here. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Heraclitus of Ephesus, and more specifically, one of his key ideas. But before we get into that, check out this killer army green hoodie. Get it only from innerwarstrength.co. Now, Heraclitus of Ephesus was born around 535 BC in Ephesus, an ancient Greek city in Ionia. Not much is known about him, and not much is left from his writings. All we have now are what are called the fragments. Now, what he wrote was basically like a series of kind of obscure and cryptic aphorisms, right? Kind of steeped in metaphor and mystery in a way, rather than he wasn't like a very systematic thinker. Let's put it like that. But at least not that we know of. But there's a very famous fragment from the fragments that he did leave behind. That's fragment number 53. And it says, to paraphrase, war is the father of all and king of all. Some he shows as gods, others as men. Some he makes slaves, others free. Now, here, what he's talking about is the word polemos, which is the Greek word for war. Now, what it means isn't like the literal sense of war, as in like, a battlefield where you have two armies fighting each other, or whatever, on, uh, on the field of battle. But the general concept of strife and conflict, okay, opposition, competition, tension. Um, Heraclitus uses it as a metaphor, um, as kind of a description of the ordering force of the universe, right? So basically saying that everything in the universe is in constant conflict with one another, right? And conflict doesn't necessarily mean just, everything just being destroyed by everything else. It means, kind of as some things are destroyed, they're also created, right? And it's all of this constant process of conflict and opposition and competition, which creates hierarchy. It creates differentiation between things. It creates change. Okay, now also change is something that Heraclitus used to talk about a lot. He used to say, that basically everything is change, right? The only constant is change. Okay. But what the hell does all of this have to do with inner war? All right. So when Heraclitus says, war is the father of all things, what does it have to do with inner war? Okay. Well, polemos, or war, or struggle, right? Um, Heraclitus says is basically the king of all as well, right? So it basically it rules everything, right? It's the entire universe is just permeated with struggle, right? It's the very ordering principle of the universe. And without struggle, without any kind of tension or conflict, nothing can come into being, right? Nothing can grow out of that. Conflict essentially creates distinction between things, right? You have one thing against another thing. Those are two different things conflicting against each other, right? Um, and because conflict is, like a contest, a competition, right? There are winners and losers. There are the excellent and then the mediocre. Okay, um, the free and the enslaved. The divine and the mortal, the extraordinary and the ordinary. So it creates hierarchy as well, which is a fundamental reality. Okay. Um, Now, it's not necessarily just, kind of like a random chaos, a random kind of, you know, um, where everything is just, yeah, sure, there's conflict, but it doesn't mean that it's just chaos. It doesn't mean that there's no order to it. Heraclitus says that, there is an underlying, what he calls a logos, right? Like a reason, like a rational order to things. Okay, so war and is basically like an underlying principle of the universe, and there's a justice about it, right? There's an inherent harmony to it, right? So all of these things conflicting with each other at the same time produce a kind of harmony. Okay, but again, what does that have to do with inner war and strength? So if you think about it, uh, this fragment 53, um, it almost maps perfectly onto the whole concept of inner war. Okay. Um, because inner war is all about struggle. It's all about going against the part of yourself that wants to be comfortable. Because getting strong doesn't come from comfort. All right. It comes from struggle. Okay. Gains are fathered by war under the bar. The tension between you and the weight, you and the iron, you know, between your fear of failure, your fear of injury, your fear of fatigue, and your willpower. Between the part of yourself that wants to be weak, that wants to be comfortable, that wants to be complacent, and the other part of yourself that wants to be strong, that wants to be great. Okay. Um, so no one got strong by avoiding conflict, by avoiding what's difficult. And polemos, war, inner war. It reveals your true self in a way, because when you struggle, when you face adversity, um, that's when it separates the wheat from the chaff. That's when the boys are separated from the men, right? During struggle, during when times are difficult, right? So if you show up and you push through, right, then obviously you're doing a better job than the other guy who's just making excuses, who's not showing up. You are the one who's free, that Heraclitus would say. You are free. You have self-mastery over yourself. You have discipline. Whereas the other one, the guy who makes excuses, the guy who doesn't show up, he's a slave. He's a slave to himself. He's a slave to comfort, to weakness. Okay? And in that way, going to war against the iron and having a brutal battle against your own weakness, it's a moment of clarity. Sometimes it's a moment of truth. Okay, sometimes it reveals something about yourself that you didn't know, right? Again, hierarchy is also something that comes naturally, um, in the gym as well. I mean, there are some guys who are stronger than others. Simple as that. Um, and the ones who have the greatest willpower will are the ones who become the strongest, right? Sure, I mean there are some guys out there who are absolute genetic freaks, and they'll pack on muscle faster than you will, or they'll just get bigger than you. Maybe they're just naturally strong, right? But regardless, it's not about competing with other lifters, right? It's about competing with yourself. um, and it's about separating yourself, your higher self, right? A version of ascending above a weaker version of yourself than yesterday's self. Okay. So conflict creates excellence. Okay. Because, without any struggle, without any opposition in life, be it, heavy weights, higher volume, whatever it is, there's no resistance for you to overcome. So war is all about overcoming those resistances in life and in the gym, of course, right? And training is, in a way, a war. It's a war against the weaker part of yourself. It's a constant battle between, um, well, even, a training program itself is a constant battle because you're battling things like fatigue and recovery. It's a tension between effort and rest, you know. It's a tension between, trying to overcome plateaus, struggling through those sessions where you feel like you're not going anywhere. You feel like you're just spinning your wheels or something, right? But and it's destructive and creative at the same time. It's destructive in the sense that you're destroying a part of yourself that used to be there, right? That was weak. And you could even say that on a molecular level, on a biologically, you're damaging muscle tissue and creating stress in your muscles and your ligaments and bones and whatnot that your body will adapt to. But it's also creative because you're creating a better version of yourself, a stronger version of yourself. Um, and if you avoid struggle, then you'll always stay mediocre, right? Because struggle is just a natural part of life anyway. Anyway, you're going to struggle either way. Doesn't matter if you're sitting on the couch or hitting the weights. One way or another, there's going to be a struggle, right? But you get to choose your struggle. That's the beauty of it. So, how can we use these ideas in the gym, right? How can we embrace these ideas, right? I would like to think that if Heraclitus was around today, he'd probably be pretty jacked. He'd probably see the modern gym, like the commercial gym, these treadmill farms that your coworkers go to, if they even go to the gym. He'd probably see those places as kind of a place of fakes, a fake peace, with all these fucking Smith machines and ellipticals and playlists playing Drake and mumble rap and all this other bullshit. But he'd probably think of something like a powerlifting gym or some other kind of warehouse gym where you have a bunch of dodgy, sweaty, scary-looking dudes as probably the real arena of polemos, right? Where real distinctions are made, where there's real freedom from weakness and from distractions and from all the accursed luxuries and comforts of the Dork Age. I think he would see the warehouse gym as, an arena of polemos, where real becoming happens day in, day out in an inner war against the self, against the part of yourself that wants to be weak. Let me know what you think. Join the war against atrophy at innerwarstrength.co. Go and pick up some killer merch. And I'll see you in the next one. Later.